Good afternoon and welcome to another episode this week of the JD Sports Show live on 12 Ounce Sports and presented by the Fields Golf Course. We want to thank our official theme song of the JD Sports Show. That is what you were just listening to, which was Odyssey by Scorch featuring Austin Tenek. You can go listen to that song now, available on SoundCloud. So shout out to those guys for allowing us to use Odyssey as the theme song for the JD Sports Show. And of course, thank you to our sponsors, MyBookie and the Fields Golf Course. Make sure to visit their website, thefieldSgolfcourse.com, now to book a tee time and for future availabilities. The Fields Golf Course, located in Ithaca, Michigan. It is another Monday, which means it's time for another hour here on 12 Ounce Sports of the JD Sports Show. Welcome in, everybody. If this is your first time listening or your third time listening, welcome to the show. Appreciate you listening in today on 12 Ounce Sports. Remember, if you want to know how to use the Zingo TV app, it's pretty simple. You just download it, and then when you get to the promo code section, you type in 1212 capital OZ, and you will get free access to all future live shows of everybody on the 12 Ounce Sports Network and several other platforms, and past shows as well. So make sure to download the Zingo TV app, the easiest way to listen to the JD Sports Show every week, every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern on 12 Ounce Sports Network. It seems like every week baseball news reigns supreme, at least recently for us here in the JD Sports Show. It has led off our topics for the past couple of weeks. The first show was the predictions for the new year. Last week was talking about would the season get canceled or suspended with the COVID outbreak of the Miami Marlins. And today, our first topic is going to be a topic that's a few days old, and we'll continue to talk about the COVID situation because it is still an issue. But our first topic is going to be about Joe Kelly. If you don't know, Joe Kelly is a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, a relief pitcher, so he comes out later in games. And last week, the Dodgers faced the Astros, Houston Astros, who this past offseason were found to be cheating during the 2017 season by stealing signs. And he obviously, and many other players around MLB, not just Joe Kelly, but many other players, did not take kindly to that. The idea that the Astros were cheating to win their World Series in 2017. And so Joe Kelly was really the first pitcher to kind of show his displeasure during the regular season. He threw at the dome of Alex Bregman and then threw again at Carlos Correa. And then after doing those, he was walking off the field and started to taunt the Astros by making faces and gestures, which the Astros did not take too kindly to. They all came out of their dugout. The Dodgers came out of their dugout, and with the new COVID social distancing rules, fights result in heavy suspensions because it goes against these social distancing rules put in place by Major League Baseball. So nobody fought or did anything. They still stayed their distance, but certainly it was a message sent by Joe Kelly. Again, throwing at Alex Bregman and throwing at Carlos Correa, and then making the taunting faces that he did, going back to his dugout after the inning ended. Well, Major League Baseball suspended Joe Kelly the day after for 8 games. Which I think in a regular season, 162-game season would probably, it would be a high number, but it certainly wouldn't be anything that the Dodgers or any team couldn't come back for. But in a 60-game season, that's a big difference. That's a marginal amount of time. And a 60-game season to lose a reliever, and not only a reliever and a pitcher, but one of their betters. Somebody that they really believe in the back end of their bullpen. Joe Kelly's been a back-end bullpen guy for most of his career now. He has helped win some World Series and done it in the bullpen form. So to lose him for 8 games was big. And again, the Dodgers are a team competing for, certainly, many people believe maybe the World Series best team in baseball. So 8 games in a 60-game span is certainly not a short length by any means. It's not short in 162. It's certainly not short in a 60-game season. So I had a poll on Twitter. I asked, what are your thoughts on the Joe Kelly suspension? I had 3 options: too high, too low, or just right. I'm not surprised by these results. Nobody, 0%, voted for too low. So nobody thought the suspension was not enough. 12% voted for just right. So 12% of people who voted thought that the 8 games was what they believed was a good amount. 88% of the people who voted on the poll, and again, you can follow at the JD Show 12 Ounce on Twitter for more fun polls and updates like that. 88% of the people who voted said that the suspension was too high. They felt like 8 games was too much for what happened. And I even had somebody tweet at me, what are my thoughts? And I wanted to kind of save my personal thoughts for the most part until today's show. And I know it was a little, a while ago, it was earlier last week, but I did want to talk about this because I think it's a really, I think it's an important subject to discuss in baseball because there's a lot of things to discuss here. First of all, the Astros, right? I mean, the fact that they did get caught cheating, there's no doubt they cheated, right? I mean, it's been concluded. The investigation has been done. The Astros cheated during 2017. They probably cheated for more years than that, but certainly for 2017 was to be followed. So now the question is, okay, that's one element to it. The second element to it is what's called the unwritten rules of baseball. And basically that means that the players kind of enforce these unwritten rules that have been in baseball forever, since baseball has been around. And one of them is, well, if you disagree with something, you throw at a player, right? You hit them. For example, if your player just got hit the inning before and you felt like it was intentional, then the pitcher the next inning comes out and plunks one of your players. That's that unwritten rule. And a lot of people feel like Joe Kelly was just kind of implementing that unwritten rule that because the Astros were caught to be cheaters and Joe Kelly did not take kindly to that, again, as many players have not. he threw at two of the best Astro players in Bregman and Correa, who were, very big part of the cheating scandal. And so the those questions now become, okay, first of all, is this kind of one of those, because we've never really, it's tough to talk about the unwritten rules in this case because of the fact that, usually it's for hitting another player on your team or you didn't like something that happened in the game. We're talking about something that was found in the offseason and that technically happened a couple of years ago. So was it okay for Joe Kelly? And I personally don't think Joe Kelly will be the last player to throw at the Astros. I think I will say that with the 8-game suspension, I have to imagine that players are looking at that and going, okay, maybe I shouldn't throw or do everything Joe Kelly did. Joe Kelly threw at 2 batters and then taunted. That was a lot. I think certainly we will still see Astro players get hit a couple of more times. I just don't think, because of looking at the suspension, I think players are going to think, okay, I can't do all that because, again, 8 games in a 60-game season is huge. It's a big portion of the season, and especially as the season goes on and those games lessen, 8 games becomes even bigger. So I'm not sure they would do all that, but I certainly believe that we will see some of those. But again, it goes back to my original question: where do we kind of draw the line here with that unwritten rules of baseball? Was the 8-game suspension too high? Was it just right? Was it too low? So again, I haven't personally shared my thoughts yet on it, but I will say now I feel like it was too high. I'm with the 88% on the Twitter poll, believing that the suspension of 8 games for Joe Kelly is too high. I don't necessarily believe Joe Kelly shouldn't have been suspended. I believe he should have been suspended. He knew what he was doing, and I'm sure he would tell you the same thing. He expected to get suspended. No doubt about it. He knew what he was going out there to do, but I don't think he or anybody else expected it to be 8 games. I think the problem for me is the Houston Astros were caught cheating, and the only thing that really happened to them is they lost their manager and general manager. They really didn't, and they lost a couple of draft picks. But none of the current players really got punished. None of the former players really got punished. They don't lose the World Series title. So I think if you were to ask an MLB team if you could cheat to win a World Series and the only thing you're going to do is lose your GM, manager, and a couple of draft picks, I think every baseball team would say, okay. Because really, at the end of the day, you still have the World Series championships, and you still, all the active players, nothing got suspended. So what this kind of says to me is I don't think priorities are necessarily straight for Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, to suspend a guy who, again, I think should have been suspended. Again, I want to make that clear. I do think Joe Kelly should have been suspended. If I was in that position, probably 2 games, maybe 2 or 3 games, just to kind of say, hey, to the rest of the league that, if you do this intentionally, we're gonna suspend you for a couple games. But 8 games for something that was really just frustration, right? Joe Kelly was not doing that other than just because he was playing off mad at the Astros. He was teed off. He and many other players have been kind of holding in this frustration because the season, of course, has been delayed. So they've had to wait even longer. And Joe Kelly, look, I don't think anybody would doubt that everything Joe Kelly did was clearly intentional, right? The throwing at Correa, the throwing at Bregman, doing all those taunts, that was clearly all intentional. But that was months and months of frustration because of the fact that we've had to wait even longer for baseball. And this was found last year in 2019, the investigation. So it's been a long time since these players have been able to do this. So when you kind of factor that in, you can really understand where Joe Kelly's coming from. And personally, I think throwing at the head is wrong, and that's why I would have suspended Joe Kelly. I think throwing at a head of any player for any reason is wrong. Maybe that's just an old man in me, even though I'm not old, but maybe that's just the old man in me. Don't throw at a guy's head. I just think that throwing at anybody's head just can create more issues. You don't want to ruin a guy's career, and to me, throwing it at the head doesn't make any sense. You want to throw at his hip or at his side or at his back. I get it. You want to throw around the guy to just kind of make him scared inside the box. I get that. I'm not a fan of throwing at a guy's head for intentional and revenge purposes for any reason, no matter what the situation is. And I know Joe Kelly's mad, and I know players, but throwing at another player's head just isn't the right way to do it. So that's why I would have suspended Joe Kelly, is because he threw at the players' heads. But 8 games, to me, when I sat there for a couple days and I kind of, I was trying to think what Rob Manfred was thinking, and a lot of a lot of people kept saying, okay, so you get 8 games for doing that, but you don't get any games for cheating. Again, as I mentioned, none of the current Astro players, got any sort of punishment or suspension for the cheating scandal. So that I think made people even more frustrated, because they go, okay, so they didn't get anything for cheating, but Joe Kelly gets 8 games in a 60-game season. And I really believe, thinking from Rob Manfred's perspective, he did this for purposes to kind of make the players go, okay, we're not going to do that anymore, right? I think it's kind of like a scare tactic. I think Rob Manfred purposely did 8 games to send a message that he doesn't want to see this continuously happen the rest of the year to the Astros. I think Joe Kelly was just the messenger. He was the object, right? I think it didn't matter. I don't think it mattered who did this. Any pitcher would have done this. It would have been 8 games. I think, again, Rob Manfred was just trying to send a message. I think it's the wrong way to go about things. I think 8 games is ludicrous. And I have personally been on the record to say I think Rob Manfred is a bad commissioner of baseball. I've agreed with very, very few things he's done. This is just another one of those on the list. I am no Rob Manfred fan. I was not a big Bud Selig fan, but he makes Bud Selig look pretty good. I think that I get it, right? He's trying to send a message to the players to not continue to throw at the Astros. But first of all, 8 games I think is excessive. I think even if that was his case, just to throw that out there, if he really is doing that to show, then where was this for the cheating? If you want to go out there and send a message, why don't you go out there and punish the Astro players for cheating? Why don't you go send a message by suspending, Jose Altuve and Carlos Correa and Alex Bregman for half a season, right? I mean, that's how you would have sent a message. And I guarantee you, I really do believe if that would have happened, if Rob Manfred would have suspended suspended some of these Astro players, the rest of the players in the league would not have been nearly as upset. I mean, I remember after the punishment was laid down, a ton of players tweeting out, that's it? Like, wait, are you kidding me? That's all they got for cheating to a World Series is they lose their manager, general manager, and a couple of draft picks? So, I mean, you knew right then, as soon as those players were thinking that, how mad they were. I mean, it didn't take that long, and then, of course, Boston had their investigation, and pretty much the same thing. Lost a manager, lost a general manager, they didn't really lose much either. So, it's like, if Rob Manfred wants to play these games of sending messages, then send them to everybody and in the right ways. Why are we sending a message to suspend a guy for 8 games when we aren't suspending anybody for cheating the game? I mean, we've already had these early 2000s of the cheating scandals with the steroids, right? And Bud Selig waited way too long to punish cheaters, and it hurt the game for a long time. I mean, it really hurt baseball once people found out that, Mark McGwire and Sosa and Bonds and all these guys were cheating with steroid drugs. And a lot of people said, well, Bud Selig waited too long. He didn't set a ground to make players feel like they shouldn't do that. Like I said just a little bit ago, if I'm another team and I'm looking at what the Astros and the Red Sox got, why wouldn't I go cheat to win a World Series to know I'm not going to get really any punishment. I'm not saying they should, nor am I saying they will. I'm not condoning cheating in any way. It tarnishes the game, but this is what happens when you don't set that standard. Again, Rob Manfred wants to send a message to baseball. He should have done that months ago by suspending and punishing the Astros and Red Sox to a far higher degree than what he did, because it's just, all you did is make players more mad and upset and make it seem like cheating's not that bad. Cheating the game entirely apparently is not that bad, according to Rob Manfred's punishments. And look, does Rob Manfred believe that what he did to the Astros and Red Sox was a big enough punishment? I have no idea, apparently, because that's what he set down. He must have thought that was pretty harsh. It wasn't at all. I mean, the Astros roster could be managed by pretty much anybody, and they still are good. And they got Dusty Baker to replace A.J. Hinch. A.J. Hinch was the manager who was fired for the cheating scandal. Dusty Baker is a great manager. And again, with the roster that he has, the Astros are going to be a really good team. I've already predicted the Astros to make the World Series this year. I don't disbelieve in the Astros' talents, but I hate that they pretty much got away, and I believe that. I mean, I know, right? Some fans will go, well, they got punished. Yeah, well, a slap on the wrist is not really much of a punishment. Joe Kelly got a worse suspension than the Astros got for cheating. And all Joe Kelly did was, and again, I'm not condoning throwing it at a head, because I do believe he should have been suspended, just not 8 games. I think he should have been suspended probably 2 or 3 games for throwing at the head of the Astro players. But, I don't know. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts. I've already heard some people's thoughts. Just continue to add your thoughts to JD Sports Show on Facebook, at the JD Show 12 ounce on Twitter. Continue to insert your thoughts and what you think about Joe Kelly's punishment. I just think I think I get it. Rob Manfred's trying to send a message that he doesn't want people throwing at the Astros all year long. I completely understand that. But he also should have sent a message to baseball when the Astros cheated, and he didn't, and he missed his card. He's also completely fumbled this season. Baseball had a chance to become the first major sport during COVID to show other sports how to do it. They didn't start much earlier than anybody else because it took them and MLBPA, the MLB Players Association, months to try to figure something out. The safety protocols I think are terrible in Major League Baseball, and we have seen that already because there's been an outbreak in the Marlins. There's now an outbreak happening with the Cardinals. That's because the safety protocols and the restrictions and guidelines that MLB had put in by Manfred and his group were not strong enough to begin with. So why a lot of players, people laughed at some of those guys sitting out at the beginning of the year, but they knew. I'm sure they looked at those protocols and guidelines and they said, that doesn't seem safe to me. And now we've had a guy in Lorenzo Cain for the Brewers who has opted out for the year. Yoenis Cespedes has opted out for the year. They have seen what's happened to different clubhouses, and it could happen to any clubhouse at any time with the guidelines that are in place. Rob Manfred, I was excited. I was really excited about Manfred when he first took over because, like I said, I really did not think Bud Selig. I thought Bud Selig did some really good things for baseball, but the whole cheating stuff, and he started to kind of outgrow him at the end of his run. So I was excited for a new commissioner, but Rob Manfred, I really can't think of really many things that he's done good. All I can think about is the negativity things that I think he's done as a commissioner of baseball. It's terrible. And I honestly can't find many people who think the opposite. I mean, it almost seems like everybody, including the players, have really not liked what he's done with baseball since taking over as commissioner. It's been a pretty poor job. I get, some people, don't touch baseball, right? I think I think you have to adapt and you have to grow as a sport. I don't mind him changing some things because I think you have to do that. I mean, baseball has to learn to adapt to younger generations because it's losing that race to NFL and NBA and hockey. But I don't know if he's doing the right ways to go about that. I don't think he is. I think he's doing a bad job at that. And it's frustrating because baseball is probably, I would say personally, my favorite sport. And I'm one of the very few under 30 who would say that. There's not very many people under the age of 30 who would say baseball is their favorite major sport. You just don't find that very often. Again, most of the time you're going to find football or basketball to be the favorite of somebody under the age of 30. But it's stuff like this going full circle here to watch the Astros basically get away with cheating, the Red Sox basically get away with cheating. Joe Kelly gets suspended 8 games. I mean, he got suspended 8 more games than everybody on the Astros and Red Sox roster did. That's 8 more games he should have been suspended than he was. It doesn't make sense to me. It's a frustrating thing right now. And then of course watching baseball fumble the protocols here and within the first 2 weeks of baseball already having to be talked about being shut down because that's how poor the guidelines and the protocols for baseball were, that it took just 2 weeks before we already had to talk about shutting the season down. And basketball has really just started up, so we'll see if the bubble works. But NASCAR has done a great job. Golf, for the most part, has not had any issues. I know golf had a couple of guys, but I think they kind of, after that happened, they really started to up a little bit more things. They haven't had any problems since then. Hockey and NBA just got started back up, so those are going to be really important to follow because they're doing the bubble system. I can almost guarantee Roger Goodell and the NFL are really watching to see, because I think the only way NFL gets going, in my opinion, this year, which I think is going to lead us into our next subject, what will happen with football this fall in college and NFL. I really believe the only way football is going to work this year is through some sort of a bubble system. I think excessive travel, is going to create too much of a problem. I think somebody came up with a great idea, and I apologize, I can't quite remember who it was. I saw it on Twitter. Somebody came up with the idea of you have like 4 or 5 host cities, and you kind of bubble everybody there. I know that still creates some travel, but far less. You kind of have a median between what NBA is doing and what MLB is doing. I like that idea. I really did because I think that limits travel to a certain extent, but it also does. You don't have to have that super excessive bubble where maybe it doesn't make NFL players upset. And by the way, there have been a lot of NFL players so far to opt out. Some big names as well, and that's not a surprise. It was the same with baseball, same with NBA, and I'm sure as NFL and the NFLPA continue to negotiate what they are going to do with COVID-19, there will be more NFL players who opt out for the 2020 season. It's just going to happen. Matthew Stafford, quarterback for the Detroit Lions, just recently contracted COVID-19, and I know it's got to be scary considering, for many reasons. One, he has several children. One that was just born. Him and his wife just had a kid, and his wife had a serious brain surgery last year, so she is probably more susceptible. So I know that's got to be really kind of dramatic and just a scary thought for the Staffords. Hopefully it's not bad for him, and hopefully the kids and his wife Kelly Stafford are okay and nothing happens to them. But you have to wonder what if, for example, a guy like Matthew Stafford sits out the year. I mean, you can't really blame him because of the fact that he has again a newborn baby. He has several other kids, and his wife had major brain surgery last year. But think about what they would do to the Detroit Lions. I mean, right away, the Lions would go from a playoff possible team with Matthew Stafford to they'll be lucky to win 4 or 5 games. I mean, that could dramatically sway a team if a big guy like a Matthew Stafford for a team sits out. And it very well could happen. I mean, I hope it doesn't. As a Detroit fan, I really don't. Odell Beckham talked today about how he doesn't believe the season will happen. But he said he said he basically doesn't think the season's going to happen, and he doesn't really want it to happen. I think if you ask the majority of the locker rooms, I think a lot of them would probably, if they were kept anonymous, would probably say, yeah, we don't want to play this year. And again, we've already seen a lot of, some big names sit out. Patrick Chung, Dante Hightower for the Patriots, some big names like that have already opted out for this year. Could Matthew Stafford be the biggest? We'll see what happens with that. Hopefully not for all of us here in Detroit, here in Michigan, but we will see. Certainly a lot to think about for football and not just NFL, but college as well. First, though, we want to thank our sponsors, MyBookie and the Fields Golf Course. Make sure to visit thefieldsgolfcourse.com to book a tee time and for future availabilities. The Fields Golf Course, located in Ithaca, Michigan, and the official theme song of the JD Sports Show is Odyssey by Scorch featuring Austin Tenick. Make sure to go to SoundCloud and search Odyssey by Scorch to listen to that. That's what we enter and leave the show with. Okay, so now let's switch over to college football, which I think has a really small chance to happen. Big news this weekend. Pac-12 players came out and basically acted as a union and said if these certain criteria are not met, all the Pac-12 will sit out the 2020 season. It was the first kind of unionized conference to do that, for players anyways. And I was kind of waiting for some team or some sort of teams to do that. I didn't expect a full conference to do that first. I did expect maybe a team, like a big name team, to kind of come out and say, but but the fact that a conference did that, a whole Power 5 conference did that, is really bad news for the NCAA football. I've said it before. Somebody asked me what are my thoughts on NCAA. I said I believe NFL will happen. I think there's I don't think I believe it will happen. I do believe there's a better chance of pro football happening because they don't have to go through as much as college does with school and stuff like that. That's their career in the NFL. Professional sports has shown that it's okay. We have not seen collegiate sports be able to do that yet, and I really don't. And I hate the idea of college football not happening because I love football and I love college football. So the idea of it not happening is heartbreaking. We've already lost conference games, which is tough enough, but I really don't believe college football will happen this year. I actually talked to an athlete from a school who does not play, they play a different sport. And I just talked to them a little bit. I said, what are your thoughts on she goes, well, everybody talks about football, but the problem is with all that is, yeah, it's not just football. Every sport has to go. You can't just have football play and that's it. You have to adhere to Title IX and all these other rules. And I didn't really think about that at first, that we have to remember that if college football, the only way college football can go is also these other college sports can go because they have to adhere to these Title IX and other collegiate rules. Which is, again, to my point of why it's so difficult for college sports to happen, because in NFL, they just have to follow one thing, right? NFL, professional football, they have to worry about that. College, you have to worry about athletes, you have to worry about students, you have to worry about other sports because you have to adhere to Title IX and all these other rules. So she brought up a good point, and it made me think that wow, there's even that made me really be like, okay, yeah, I don't know if college football is going to happen, because you have to think about the fact that they also have to be okay with every other sport or enough sports to adhere to the Title IX rules. I hope I'm wrong, but I do not see college football happening this year. Between that, thinking about the Title IX rules, thinking about all the issues they've already had, and then with the Pac-12 kind of unionizing. Goodness, apologize for that. Can't speak. Together and coming to as one to say, if these certain criteria we're not going to play. And basically, for those who don't know, the biggest thing they said is we want our schools to uh, uh, I'm trying to think of the word. They want the schools to credit the scholarships the athletes are given, even if a player uh, gets sick or hurt. So they want to know that if I play this year, I have some sort of insurance that if I get COVID-19 and I can't play or something like that happens, my full scholarship will still be rewarded to me, which I think is fair. I do. I think that this is a new time. I know a lot of people might think that's crazy, but I think it's unfair. If you're going to go ask these young men and women to come play sports for you at a collegiate level during uncertain times and during scary times, I don't want to hear that young kids are more, aren't as susceptible, and I don't care about all that. Anybody can get it. So if I was in that position, I would be saying the same thing. Like I want some sort, because college athletes have basically no insurance, right? I mean, if a star college athlete gets hurt during his college career, that could be it. That's it. They don't have a salary. They don't have a contract where they can. That's it for them, and their future is over. So I personally I believe in that. I would back that if I was a parent or if I was an athlete as well. I would be right with that as well. Even as a non-athlete or parent, I think that that's the smart thing for them to do, because anything can happen. These are such weird times, and you just, man, if you're a really good player and you got this full scholarship ride and you get COVID and something happens and you get sick and you miss time and it affects you, I would want some sort of insurance too, especially if I'm willing to go risk it for a school that I don't have any sort of future um, responsibility to, other than to fulfill my years there. But I'm me more so in terms of monetary reasonings. It's not like I'm in professional where I'm under contract. I would want some insurance too, so I fully understand those college kids thinking that way. I would want that too. Um, I would want that too. I would want some sort of insurance if I was a college athlete, that if I contract COVID or something happens like that, that my full scholarship ride can still be granted, and that it's not going to hurt me. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I know there are some who disagree with that, some who agree with that. But in my opinion, I feel like they have every right to say that, to stand there and say, hey, if these are not, if we don't get some sort of a promise or insurance that we can go play, because we're going to go risk ourselves for this, that we have some sort of something to back ourselves on. So I don't blame college athletes for doing that. What are your thoughts? Make sure to follow me and like my page over at the JD Sports Show. Make sure to follow the Twitter page. And that Twitter page is at the JD Show 12 ounce. Make sure to follow along and continue on the conversation of baseball, NFL, and college football. It is going, look, COVID has completely turned the world upside down as we know it. Nothing is normal anymore. You can't, I don't like when people go, well, that's not how it used to be. Well, nothing's like how it used to be right now. The world is upside down, and we have to adjust to it. And college football, pro football, baseball, hockey, and NBA, everybody's having to readjust how you go about things. And as scary as that of a thought as that is, and as weird as it thinks, sometimes you have to do backward things to go forward. And that's kind of the case right now for baseball, for football, both collegiate and NFL, NBA. I mean, who would have thought, if I would have told you a year ago that we're going to do the playoffs in NBA and everybody's going to stay in a Disney hotel, they can't leave, and we're going to play the game without fans on a small court, everybody would have looked at me sideways. But that's just how things are right now. It's the only way that we're able to get sports. You have to go a little bit sideways to get there. And if that's what you have to do, then what you have to do. I think a lot of people like myself would say whatever it takes to get sports, let's just have sports. We just want sports. I said it last week on the show. It was so nice to watch baseball and now to see NBA. Been able to watch golf and NASCAR and hockey will be back soon. Just being able to watch sports again. I know it's weird with no fans and the difference in how the game is played and where it's played and how it looks, but at the end of the day, it's still the sport, right? Baseball is still baseball. Basketball is still I mean, there's still the core values of the sport there. And as much as it may suck to have to, not hear those fans cheer or get the visuals of the stadiums that you once knew and not get everything like it once was, we will get back there eventually. It will happen again. Things will go back to a more normal phase. But if we want sports in 2020, this is how things will have to be for now until things change. And hopefully, hopefully, um, things will even out. And again, we can get back more to a normal sports life in 2021. I know we will eventually get there. But for now, we have to go and live life as it is. About 15 minutes left here on the JD Sports Show. Again, thank you to everybody that's listening. If this is your first time listening, I appreciate it. Make sure to continue to follow us throughout here on 12 Ounce Sports. If this is your second, third time listening, I do appreciate it. I love having conversations with everybody. I've really enjoyed joining the 12 Ounce Sports family over the last couple of weeks. Been enjoyable to see that and kind of be a part of that. Being welcomed with open arms and being able to have a platform. Life is crazy right now. Times are uncertain. There's no tomorrow. More so today than ever. But to be able to share this and share my thoughts on the sports world as best as I can here on 12 Ounce Sports has been enjoyable. And again, I appreciate everybody who's listening for being a part of this early journey, and hopefully many more in the future. I just saw. I just want to talk about something quickly. Just saw a tweet, and I think it's kind of interesting. I know this is kind of random, but I think it's an interesting conversation. Somebody just said, "I believe Aaron Judge is a better player than Cody Bellinger." Okay, let's dissect this a little bit. First of all, Aaron Judge is on an absolute tear to start 2020. He has been killing. Well, he started off a little slow, but his last 5 or 6 games, he has been destroying the baseball, and he has looked like an MVP so far this year. I would not disagree with that at all. But Cody Bellinger has been pretty good too. In fact, he just made a catch last night in their game in center field where he had to run a long way to go get it, and he caught it, and it won the game for the Dodgers. So, thinking about that, Aaron Judge versus Cody Bellinger, I look at everything, right? I want to look at the whole make of a player, hitting, defense, instincts. So let's kind of dissect that. Well, let's end the show by figuring out this debate. So when it goes to hitting, and I don't mean home runs, I mean just overall hitting average, I think I would probably give the nod to Bellinger. I think when I think of Aaron Judge, I think of home runs. I don't really think of consistent hitting. I think he's a good hitter, but I think I would think more of Bellinger. When I think of power, yeah, certainly I think Bellinger has a really good power swing. I like Cody Bellinger's swing a lot. But boy, when Aaron Judge connects with the baseball, it sounds and looks different. So I'll give the power check to Judge. I think those were two of the easier ones. Now let's go a little bit deeper into this fielding. I don't think of Aaron Judge as a great fielder, maybe an average fielder. Cody Bellinger has played Gold Glove defense at times, and he's played it all over. He's done it at first base. He's done it in the outfield. I just said it in center field the other night. He made a running catch to end the game and win. That was huge. I would definitely give the nod to Cody Bellinger when I think of defense. I think he's a better defensive player. And if you were to ask me who's going to win a Gold Glove first, Aaron Judge or Cody Bellinger, I would say Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger has a much better chance, in my opinion, to win a Gold Glove than Aaron Judge. So when I think of defense between those two, I would think of Cody Bellinger. So that goes to Bellinger. Okay, let's go to running. Well, I don't really think of Judge when I think of running. All right, and Cody Bellinger can steal bags, and he's a pretty good runner. Again, if you're playing center field, you can run pretty well. So that check mark goes to Cody Bellinger as well. So right now, Cody Bellinger's got a few check marks over Aaron Judge. The only check mark I would give to Judge right now is power. But this is where it gets tricky. And this is a really, in my opinion, if I'm looking at a better player, who can change the game with one swing of a bat, right? And I would not argue against either one. I would even argue as giving a check mark to both. Cody Bellinger, especially last year when he won the MVP, proved that his bat and his glove can change games. Aaron Judge, same thing. He has given Yankees whole new life the last 5 or 6 games because of his bat. He pretty much won the game last night for them against Boston in that offensive hit fest with his bomb in the 8th inning. They both can change the game with their bats, so I'm going to give a check mark to both. I don't like to do that normally, but I don't think I could decide because I think they both have that ability to change the game with one swing of the bat. If you want to talk about a game changer all around, that's a little bit different, right? Because, Cody Bellinger could make a play defensively that could change a game. Judge, he could leap over a wall pretty well. He's, super tall, and he has the ability to jump over the wall pretty well. He has robbed quite a few home runs. But I'll give the game changer check to both because I think they both have the ability to do that. So when we look at everything, I only gave one true check mark to Judge. And I gave the tie with the game changer, but I gave more check marks to Bellinger. So I guess that means I'm going to have to go with Cody Bellinger. I believe Cody Bellinger is a better player than Aaron Judge. I think what's important is I think it's the worst thing you can do in sports is look at a sample size and go, that player is better than that player. Because at any given time, a 10-game, 15-game, stretch, any player can be the best player, right? Mike Trout is the best player in baseball, but for a week, it could be Aaron Judge or Cody Bellinger. But that's why looking at sample size is a dangerous thing. You can't look at a 5-game, 10-game stretch and go, that's the best player in baseball, or he's better than that guy. And I think that's what maybe what people are doing to Aaron Judge right now. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Aaron Judge. I think Aaron Judge is a really good player. I think he is the best player on the Yankees roster. And I think he has the ability to take over games and change momentum and carry a team. But this guy who tweeted this to Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger is looking at a sample size. When I think about an entire career so far, Cody Bellinger has been a better player. Cody Bellinger has won MVP. Cody Bellinger has done phenomenal things. He's been in Gold Glove races. I really, at the end of the day, would pick Cody Bellinger. If you're going to put me up and say, all right, Cody Bellinger, Aaron Judge, you got to pick one right now because, again, I'm not thinking of the last 5 or 6 games like some people might be. I'm thinking of a career so far sample size, which I know has been small for both guys. They're both young and have a long way to go. But right now, I have to give it to Aaron Judge. Or, excuse me, to Cody Bellinger. Again, I'm not taking anything away from Aaron Judge because I think Aaron Judge, again, is the best player in New York. I think he is a top 10, 15 player in baseball. But I would put Cody Bellinger ahead of Aaron Judge. Both really good players. I would take nothing away from either of them. I think they're both really good. But right now, I would take Cody Bellinger. Again, big shout out to our sponsors, MyBookie and the Fields Golf Course. Make sure to visit their website, thefieldsgolfcourse.com, now to book a tee time and for future availabilities. The Fields Golf Course, located in Ithaca, Michigan, and the official theme song of the JD Sports Show, Odyssey by Scorch featuring Austin Tenick, now available on SoundCloud. It is a song that enters and outs us here on the JD Sports Show. Final thoughts for you here on this Monday. I hope that next week on the show, our first discussion is not something negative about baseball, but something rather positive about baseball. I know the good news I've been watching is that the Phillies have again continued to test negative. The Marlins, the Marlins who had the big outbreak are starting to go down. The Cardinals are still, in that red situation, but good news to see these other teams go down again. It is huge to see that even though the Philadelphia Phillies face a team with an outbreak, they did not have that. That is huge for baseball because it means that just because one team gets an outbreak in one dugout doesn't necessarily mean the other team does. But again, this is why, and the one thing I think Rob Manfred did good, say something good about him on the show, is after this, he basically said players have got to follow the rules more strictly or we're not going to be able to play. I think the one thing the Marlins that outbreak did is I think it probably shapened up a lot of the players into knowing that, okay, you've got to wear a mask in dugouts. I know a lot of the players probably weren't, and that, it is what it is. But they were probably kind of nonchalantly wearing them in dugouts and stuff like that. You just don't know who might have it, and it could be in your locker room. It could be on the visiting locker room, but it's really big to see that the Phillies are continuing to have no positive test. It basically means that they did not get any of that big whiff of the outbreak that happened with the Marlins. Tigers were scheduled to play the Cardinals tonight, but that game is expected to not happen, and they will play a doubleheader to make that game up. To hopefully make that up, as long as the Cardinals don't have any more positive tests, that series could be canceled depending on that. So that's something to keep an eye out. Speaking of the Tigers, they certainly looked more like the Tigers yesterday. They lost both games in the doubleheader to the Cincinnati Reds, even though, and they didn't hit for Jack Diddley. They had 3 runs in 2 games yesterday, and all 3 runs came off of an error. They scored 3 runs in the first game of the doubleheader, and it was off the Nick Castellanos error. They didn't score any and only had 2 hits in game 2, and regardless if you want to say it's because they only played 7 innings and not 9, well, they really played 14 innings, and they got 3 runs, all unearned. And the Tigers looked like the 2019 Tigers yesterday against Cincinnati Reds after looking pretty good there for a little bit. They looked good against the Royals. They had a good game against the Reds. And you're thinking, okay, maybe they can squeak by. And then the Reds came yesterday with a doubleheader and slapped the Tigers across the face and said, nope. And, of course, now the Tigers have to wait on what happens with the St. Louis Cardinals. Will that series go on or not? That is to be remain to be in question. Hopefully it will. I would like to see the Tigers play somebody else than the Royals and Reds because they started out the season with the Reds, then they Kansas City, and then again with the Reds. So this will be a different team to watch. Speaking of St. Louis Cardinals. Hopefully your favorite team in baseball is doing a lot better than mine, and hopefully for all you NBA fans, hopefully the people who bought major stock in Zion Williamson are not watching. He has not had a good restart, and it's early, and the guy is still young. I'm not rooting for him. I'm not one of those guys who wants to root against him. He just has not looked real good in his return to the bubble and to the 2020 season. NBA, I just can't figure it out. If I feel like it's going to be a rightful champion or not, right? Like, one day I go, yeah, I'll look at that champion and be like, yeah, that's okay, they deserved it. And then, like, right now I'm thinking, going, I just don't know if I can look at the NBA champion this year and be like, yeah, that's the champion of this year. You know what I mean? And that's why a lot of people, including myself, were against restarting the season because there wasn't really anything left. And, baseball I was very for because they still had a whole season. NHL, I'm a little different on NHL, though, because I think with NHL, their playoffs are so much different and so much harder than every other sport, it feels like, because it's like 7-game series for everything. It is one of the hardest championships to win in sports. That I'm okay with them, and I would if I was more of an NHL fan, I watch it. My Red Wings aren't really good, so it's harder to watch. But if I was an NHL fan and my team won the Stanley Cup this year, I feel like that's still valid because it's just. But boy, it's just I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you feel like do you feel the same way? To me, it doesn't feel as valid with NBA as it does with hockey or with baseball. Baseball, I think, is going to be, as long as baseball doesn't have any huge disruptions or cancellations um, throughout the rest of this year. If baseball can get through the regular season and can get through the playoffs, I would validate that championship. I know it's a shortened season, but we've had a shortened season in baseball before. That World Series champion is still World Series champion. So I would still validate that. There's just something about the NBA season that just does not feel. I've actually, one of my good buddies is a really big NBA fan. And I asked him, how do you feel? And he said the same thing. He does not feel like, he said, I don't care who wins the NBA championship this year, the Larry O'Brien trophy. He does not feel like it will validate in any way. He doesn't believe in whoever the champion is for NBA. So that's coming from a big NBA fan. Like I said, I'm not a huge NBA guy, so I don't want to speak about it too much, just because I don't think my opinions may be as valid as other opinions. But that was coming from a big NBA fan to say, hey, no, it doesn't feel quite as valid for me as it does for other sports. So, I don't know. Again, I'd love to hear everybody's opinions. Continue to follow me over on Twitter at the JD Show 12 ounce, and like me on Facebook, the JD Sports Show. I want to thank everybody again for listening on this Monday afternoon. Thank you again to Odyssey, our official theme song, and the Fields Golf Course, our sponsors. Thank you again to 12 Ounce Sports for allowing us to continue to use their platform to talk sports even through a crazy 2020 season. Before I leave today's show, though, it is a very special day. Today is August 3rd of 2020. Today is a very special person in my life's birthday. Today is my mom's birthday, and I just want to give her a shout out here on the show on this Monday afternoon and wish her the best birthday possible and continue to thrive for her. Special to, of course, always wish your mom a happy birthday, considering they brought you into this world. And she is a very special person. She continues to believe in my dreams. Not many people would leave their workspace to let their kid do a show every Monday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern on 12 Ounce Sports, but she's allows me to do that. She's made a lot of sacrifices in my life, and hopefully one day I can repay her the favors by doing what I like to do in my life. So happy birthday, Mom. Thank you all again for watching today. I wish you a very good Monday, and goodbye, everybody.
Hey, don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do something. You got a dream, you got to protect it. People can't do something themselves. They want to tell you you can't do it. You want something, go get it. Period.